So also out this week, Ruby Sparks, which is from the directors of Little Miss Sunshine, written by and starring Zoe Kazan, who plays the eponymous Ruby. So Paul Dano, is this sort of Salinger...
I think it's Dano.
Nouvelle Vague, is this Salinger-esque author who's had a huge hit, which has basically set him up for life financially, but now he's completely blocked. He goes to his psychiatrist, says, I can't write anymore. The psychiatrist says, look, the problem is you're worrying too much about writing something good. Why don't you just write something bad? He goes home and starts writing about his dream girl, who is this sort of pretty, kooky, flame-haired, vivacious, artistic, but not enough to be challenging to him, sexually voracious character, who he sort of imagines on the page, and as soon as he starts writing about it, he can't stop writing about it. And then the next thing that happens is she appears, and she appears to be real, and he thinks he's going mad, but everyone else can see her too. Here's a clip.
This is insane. You manifested a woman with your mind.
You can't tell anybody, not Mom, not Susie.
So
no.
what, we're just going to pretend she's your girlfriend?
She is my girlfriend.
Stranger things have happened?
I don't think so. I think this is pretty much the strangest thing that's ever happened, ever.
Please don't ruin this for me. Promise me, no one.
Fine.
Thank you.
Oh, wait, well, so you can, like, change her.
I guess.
So you can make her, like, do anything. For men everywhere. Tell me you're not gonna let that go to waste.
And that's then the underlying conceit, is that he knows that he has the power to change her, and he says at first, I'm not going to write anything else because I love her as she is, and then as the relationship starts to develop problems, he does start to rewrite her character, and everything that he rewrites about her actually starts to damage the thing with which he fell in love in the first place. It's a very peculiar film. On the one hand, it is, at some level, weird science with books. Remember that film, Weird? So it is, it's kind of weird literature. That is definitely one side of it. And it's not... It's that the idea of the dream girl manifesting obviously, you know, isn't completely original. It has turned up in feature films. I mean, there's a number of short films which have dealt with that, and it underwrites several feature films. But there is one structural problem, which is the question about whether or not she is real or whether or not she is just imagined becomes very, very fudged when they start bringing in other characters who relate to Ruby. And I think at that point the movie starts to sort of lose its way. And all that is slightly troublesome. However, the thing that makes it interesting is the fact that it's written by its central character means that you can read it on one level as a kind of treatise on what it's like to be a character who is being written by somebody else. And you can expand from that and say, well, perhaps, therefore, it's a discussion about the way in which when you get into relationships, people try to turn you into something else, specifically the way that men try to make women into the thing that they want them to be, or the way that any two people in a relationship can attempt to change somebody and make them into something that they're not originally. And actually, the point at which the film is most effective is when it almost tips over into horror. There's a sort of Frankenstein motif going on. And there is one section in it in which the sort of derangement, the idea of being able to write and change somebody's personality, descends into a sequence which does come very, very close to horror. And I really liked that. And that part of the film made me think that actually, on that level, the film is more incisive than perhaps it had seemed from the outside. You know, you can read it as an account of what it's like to be an actress and to have to play roles which people are constantly rewriting. You can read it as something about the gender war. The problem with it is that in the end, it kind of wants to take the rougher edges off. And in the end, I mean, if you've seen the trailer, you know that the trailer is very sort of kooky and quirky and funny. And it wants to play kooky and quirky and funny. And I have the same reservations about it that I had about Little Miss Sunshine, is that in the end, it doesn't quite have the gumption to deal with the darkness underneath it. So on one level, it is still weird science with books, but there is something else there, and there's something else is there because it is interesting that the story is authored by the character in it who is being authored by the story. So you can, I think what'll happen is exactly how much you either enjoy or are not irritated by it depends on how much you think, okay, well, that's an interesting conceit. I'm actually watching somebody who's written this story, writing it about their own character being written. Weird science with books on the one hand, something deeper on the other hand, and it actually ends up being in the middle, which is slightly unsatisfactory, but not without interest and charm.